Welcome to the Supported Living Property Podcast with your host, me, Lisa Brown, the place to learn about supported living property investing. Hi Nan, it's great to have you here today. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
Hello, it's my pleasure. I'm good, very well. How about you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about you?
Yes, of course. My name is Nan Lee. I am an HMO developer and landlord. I've been doing the HMOs now 5 years, probably. Before that, I work in bank industry for 10 years, doing fixed income analysis. So that's involving analyze returns and the risk for the big pension companies. And after 10 years, I get married, have kids, and the corporate life just kind of sliding away from my life schedule. The property business coming up to my mind. So I gradually get into this property business and start develop HMOs. At the moment, I have 6 HMOs. 5 of them are letted to the support living providers.
Okay, so really a big chunk of your portfolio, or most of your portfolio then, is with supported living providers.
Yes, that's right. So it's the best strategy I ever came across before. And so I would like to do more about those in the future.
So how did you come across supported living? How did that happen? Did you plan to do that from the beginning, or were you thinking purely about HMOs at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, the first step is, to being a landlord, you're thinking of just to buy a flat or a house and rent it to your family, isn't it? So yeah, and after that, at that time, my situation is I live in the center of the London in a house which not many family tenant be able to afford it. And generally in that area, I get the people rent a room and they work in the city or in the local industry, and it's inside the city. So a lot of people from European or students. It's generally a HMO market. That's how I get into the HMO market. And that works really well in the center of the city. And then later on, I moved out of the London to the suburb of London, southeast. I'm still thinking, right, let's do more of the HMOs. I think it works, but different location have different story. I consequently bought another 2 or 3 of the HMOs and then rented out. But the tenant profile has been changed. They are not high paid professional, like solicitors, lawyers in the center of the city. They were generally like primary school teachers or work in a shop, in a gym. And I find it, managing people become a quite great problem for me because I have 2 young kids. And I also, at that time, I also have a full-time job with my husband. So it's kind of become impossible to manage all of them, and it's in a like I would say just in an occasion situation. There is one day my HMOs I have appointment with the local council officer, HMO officer, to check on it. So I just mentioned to him, will you help me to find tenants which I do not need to manage them? I here is the property newly refurbished, all brilliant, done, but I just don't want to manage all my tenants anymore. And things there, he introduced me to 3 organizations who works with the council, and from there I got into the support living. At that time, I didn't know it's called supported living. Actually, I just think, yeah.
You were looking for a solution for a landlord problem, weren't you? You then,
yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So, what kind of tenants are in the property? What kind of organisations are they in your HMOs?
The local is a small local charity who has been in the borough for 20 odd years. They have their own, buildings which in housing the drug additive tenants, and it's a family-run business. And yeah, my house is used as a move-on homes for those people who had cleared record for at least 1 or 2 years, and they just want to get back to the society, So they live in my house, but they also take on trainings or working, I think maybe less than 15 hours a week. So
Okay.
Those tenants are
So from your point of view, you've got an HMO, your HMO is leased by this charity.
Yes.
How long are they leasing the property from you for?
We had a contract signed. It's 2 + 3, so 2 years initially, and have a break clause, and then continue for 3 years onward. Yeah.
And so that means that in that time they're covering the voids, they're covering the bills. Is that right on those properties?
They're covering the water, electricity, gas, broadband, council tax, all of that, and it's a fixed rent I'm getting from them every month.
So compared to the hassle of managing an HMO, where you've got to manage all of those bills, you've got to manage the tenants, and you've got quite a high void turnover generally with HMOs, haven't you? You've not got any of those headaches. This organisation leases the property and you get the money every month into your bank account effectively.
Yeah, exactly. It's saved me a lot of time. As I said, I don't need to first of all pay those utilities. The utility inflate quite a lot. So, their price going up, and for the HMOs, landlord generally have struggled to control those bills as well, because the tenant will not keep the light shut, or they have the windows open, same time radiator open. So it saved me the money, at the same time save me the time to manage those bills, taking calls to the British Gas. That take every landlord know how painful it is to give them
forever.
It takes forever. That's brilliant. And also, I don't need to managing my tenants. I do not know who they are. I don't know their names. I don't need to look at check in, check out, or doing inventories. And that saves a lot of time and management effort as well. And also, no voids, to worry about. So brilliant.
So it makes a massive difference, doesn't it, from your point of view? So after that experience, after finding that organisation, you then went on to carry on letting your other HMOs. Did you say, right, fine, let's put them all across to supported living? Or
yes, I start with one property, and then I roll out to the 5 properties. It's all done within a short period of time, probably 2 years. 2 years, I'll say 2 or 3 years. I start buying more, and then refurbish them, extension, and we sign the contract in the middle of the construction. We set up a period of handing the key to the organization, and then once it's job done, and here's the key, here you go. It's like smooth transactions, the best that the developer would ever can expect it.
Absolutely. If you're developing to order for a supported living provider, and you can get that certainty of it, you've got your guaranteed exit, haven't you? You know when you're going to start getting the rent coming in, you know exactly how it's going to work, so it's a really lovely exit if you can get it all planned and have that relationship with the provider.
Yes, definitely.
It can work really well. What about any downsides, Nan? Have there been any problems or anything that makes you think, oh, maybe it wasn't so easy, or this was a bit of a challenge?
It's a good question. The downside, I guess the upside also is the downside. It's the coin of two sides, isn't it? Like you have one, trusted organization to let all your property. But what about if their organization have a problem? Then all your basket is in one, your eggs in the one basket, isn't it? Well, if you're thinking about that, it's a potential risk. But I always tell myself, if that happens, my property still in a very good condition, I can let it back to other people, just finding a tenant, and if they leave you replace it, or you have employee, if they leave you hire someone else. It's actually the same concept, but yeah, but you just have to get hold of that a fear in your head, knowing the risk, and go ahead. I mean you don't need to over worried about that. I think that's a way to deal with it. Yeah, I mean it's more like a business to business relationships. So luckily I have 10 years working experience in a big company, so I generally okay to deal with those problems along the business.
And financing, did you find getting finance on the properties challenging with the supported living tenants in place?
Yeah, it is a challenging, but luckily you guys get hold of it with the brokers. Yeah.
That is always a downside, and I think if you're a new landlord and you haven't got landlord experience, it makes it slightly more complicated, doesn't it? Getting hold of finance, it can be a little bit more expensive as well.
Yeah, it's also depend on whether the care provider live in the house, or they just help you to managing it. And some of the lenders will still take on it. It's just like the same way of you have the DSS council tenants in your property. It's not the end of the world. It's depend on how you present this deal, how you're constructing this deal. It's about your working relations with the bank and with your supported provider to come up with a solution to satisfy all the parties' requirement.
And using good brokers who understand what you're doing, so they can present the case
Exactly.
as well, really helps, doesn't it? From us kind of the property point of view, is there anything different about the way that you do these properties to the way you were doing to your professional tenants? Is your finishing spec exactly the same, or is there anything different that the organization asks for?
I started doing the property as the first, with the first solution to be suitable for professional HMO lets. So not major change at all, but the provider did ask some slightly alternations which can be done easily. One thing is they would require a shed at the back of the garden, so people can get in, smoke or doing socials, because they are like a group of people together, rather than a separate HMO tenants. They will not use the garden at all. So that's one of the things. And also they would require to get the lights at the back of the garden and the front of the garden, for the security. And they may also want the CCTV to be installed as well.
Is that on the outside of the building or in the communal spaces?
In the communal space. Yeah. Those, just small things.
So not massive. Not massive difference. And are they all en suite properties, or are they shared bathrooms, or is it a mixture?
It's a mixture, but I was generally worried the rooms need a suite. But one of my house, 3 people share one bathroom, and it's never been a problem. I never heard any complaints or anything. So that would work as well, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so a real sort of just a standard professional HMO. And the communal space is what communal space do you have? Is it just like a kitchen diner, or is there a separate living room in your HMOs?
It's a risk diner. Yeah, it's we don't providing a separate living room.
That's good. And the organization is obviously happy with them because they've carried on taking more of them from you. So
yeah. It's I think it works fine. And it's generally my refurbishment have the refers to the guide of the HMO requirement of the local council, and I will get the HMO lessons for those property as well.
Yeah, and that's really key, I think, isn't it? And I think because a lot of the providers, it really varies, but a lot of them don't really understand the HMO licensing. They don't understand the rules around it. So as a landlord, sometimes if you make sure your property's licensed and meets all those criteria, it just saves all of that hassle, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, exactly. I have some friends, they would ask me, should I find a property first or should I find a support living provider first?
I get asked that all the time.
All the time. And the answer is you have to find a property first, and you probably need to develop it into a HMO first. And then if any provider interested, you always can slightly changing the layout or, facility to accommodate their needs. But, it doesn't really work the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very difficult to do. I think you end up, if you're buying something very purely for supported living, you end up with a very expensive asset that you have to make sure it stacks in other things, doesn't it? Like you were saying, Nan, you're, with your risk analysis, with this organization taking a lot of your portfolio, that actually if they were to pull out, break the clauses, wherever within the lease, that actually, it will still stack as a private rental as to those professional tenants. Because at the end of the day, you own an expensive asset you need to be able to reuse and make work for you.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, you do have to be very cautious about getting too specialized. You can do it, but you need to make sure, actually, I've done it like this, but actually I could do this, this, and this and make it back, and it would still work as a family rental or, a student let or a serviced accommodation, whatever your secondary exits are. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is really, really key to have those other exits, isn't it? I think is. And I think one thing for me, with your background in investment and your background in risk analysis and all of, that the sort of pension fund side of it, there's a big comfort in the fact that you've seen this as a really viable investment asset for you and your family, so I think that sort of says a lot, doesn't it, that you're looking at it with that risk background and with that investment background, but you can still see that it's a really strong investment.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it is. It's something really good. Do you have any tips or advice for property investors? We're always asked for advice about supported living and getting started, or any advice that you have for people. So what would you say, Nan?
I have lots of the landlord friends, and some of them are struggles with the property management side. The advice to them would be, it's just part of the business that everyone has, have to, there's some, hurdles along the way, but don't get yourself become a tired landlord. You have to, outsource those things to trusted people. If you can't find a trusted handyman or anything, then keep changing and trying to keep on finding one until you landed a good one. That's my own experience. Once you landed a good one, try to keep them, pay them a bit premium, and to get your time back from this property investment. Don't become a tired landlord, because from my investment background, the biggest premium from the property investment is a long-term holding. If you can get rid of the hassles in the middle and keep the property as long as possibly you can, then the reward is the back. A lot of landlords, rush to buy the properties, but then sink themselves in the management side, and then it's too hassle, they cannot bear with it, then they sold it in 2 or 3 years later. It's not, a advisable action to do. So yeah, definitely, if you cannot find a support living, then try to find one, or work with the letting agent or the handyman peoples, try outsourcing them as possible.
That's really good advice. Absolutely. I think with supported living, you can be quite a lazy landlord, really, can't you, compared to having to be a really hands-on landlord?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the only time I spend really, it's I push myself to go there every 3 months to have a check. That's take half a day to open the doors, all of the rooms. Yeah, most time I find the house is very tidy and clean. Once you get to the, I have a system of all of those gas checks, and if there's anything wrong, to repair them. Once you get the system set up, it's really, as you can manage it with less than, I'll say, 2 or 3 days, months. That's time to scale them, the time I spend on them.
And that's managing 6 HMOs.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. It just says volumes, doesn't it, when you speak to other landlords who are there every day dealing with squabbles over milk and other bits and pieces. It just shows the power of supported living, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Nan, thank you ever so much for being on today. It's been great chatting to you. Thank you.